Okay. Greetings, everyone. My name is Peter Young. I'm on the board of Societe de Chimie Industrielle, and I'm also head of programs. I'm very, very pleased to welcome you to today's event. We're very excited about it, and there'll be a fireside chat. But before I do that, I just want to mention two things. One is we have two upcoming events, or actually three. One, October 4th, which is on sustainable investing and what's the investment activity in green chemistry, which I think is a hot topic. And then October 18th, that'll be virtual. Then October 18th, we're going to have an in-person and virtual presentation by David Cole, who is the CEO of the Science History Institute, who will talk about the development of DNA and DNA sequencing and the impact that's going to be having on the future on so many different things, and not just drug development. And then November, we're finalizing an in-person and virtual event on on digitization, which is an important topic. And this is our track record of trying to present important topics and important speakers on things that we think the membership is interested in, and we hope you will join us for those events. My role ends in about 10 seconds, and because I'm going to introduce Sean Pan, who is a member of the program committee of Societe de Chimie Industrielle. He's also a senior executive at an inks company, and he'll be the one who will be moderating and conducting the fireside chat today, and introducing our speaker. So, Sean, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Peter, for the introductions. Good morning, afternoon, evening. Thank you all for joining wherever you are. Today we are live from the Lubrizol Global Headquarters in Cleveland, Ohio. We are very excited to have Dr. Rebecca Liebert, President and CEO of Lubrizol, joining us today for a fireside chat and share her wisdom and experiences in leading transformation through uncertainty and disruption. So we'll start with a quick introduction of Rebecca, and then we will go through a list of prepared questions. That will take about 50 minutes, and then we'll leave 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A.
Sounds great, Sean.
Yeah, thank you for joining, Rebecca.
Thank you for coming to Wycliffe.
So Rebecca Liebert is President and CEO of Lubrizol Corporations, a Berkshire Hathaway company. Prior to Lubrizol, Rebecca was Executive Vice President at PPG Industry, a global paint, coatings, and specialty materials company. She joined the company in June 2018, leading the automotive OEM coatings business, including the company's mobility initiative. Her most recent responsibility include the global industrial segments at PPG, Asia Pacific region, and global procurement, as well as resin and industrial segment manufacturing. Prior to PPG, Rebecca served as President and CEO of Honeywell UOP, a leading international supplier to the petroleum refining, gas processing, petrochemical productions, and major manufacturing industries. Prior to joining Honeywell, Rebecca served as President of Reynolds Food Packaging, Alcoa Cala. Rebecca served on the board of American Chemistry Council, the board of Corteva. She also was elected to the highly esteemed National Academy of Engineering for her leadership in developing and executing innovative initiatives to strengthen and advance the manufacturing industry. She earned a bachelor in chemical engineering from University of Kentucky, a PhD in chemical engineering from Carnegie Mellon University, and an MBA from Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University. So impressive qualification resume. So we'll get right to the question. So the first question is about your career journey. Rebecca has a combination of a PhD, a membership in National Academy of Engineering, as well as the CEO of a major chemical company. And typically a combination of any of the two above would be rare, not to mention all three. So Rebecca, can you walk us through your unique career journey?
Well, thanks, Sean. Well, I'll just give a little bit about my history because I think that sets the stage. I grew up on a farm in Eastern Kentucky, and I like to say I learned practical engineering at a very early age. Chemical engineering while we were mixing the pesticides and fertilizers, for the crops. civil engineering while we were surveying the fields and plowing them, mechanical, fixing all the equipment, electrical. We had electrical wires that kept the animals in their fences or in their fields. And lastly, biomedical engineering. So we were taking care of all those animals. We would birth the animals on the farm, and we would oftentimes have to give them shots and other medications to take care of them. So when I went to University of Kentucky, I knew that as practical engineering. Then I became, I guess, a book engineer, right? A true proper trained engineer. And, there was really no question for me about graduate school or not. I come from 7 generations of educators. My parents were school teachers, my grandparents, my great-grandparents. And so education was super important to us, and getting a PhD just seemed natural. Now, when I started working, however, I knew I wanted to go into industry, not into academia. And I started with a company called Nova Chemicals. It's a small chemical company. And being a small company, I got to do a lot of things. I was hired as a research engineer, but we would develop new polymers in the lab. We would take them to the plant and scale them up in, massive reactors. And then we would get to take them into the field and try them at our customers. And, that's the true full cycle, right, of business. Yeah. Innovation, production, application at the customer. And what I learned with the customers is if I could help the customer make more money, I could help Nova make more money. And I got the business bug very early on. And I was blessed by some great leaders at Nova to give me opportunities to move into business jobs. I did an M&A job. I did sales, strategy, and then took my first real commercial sort of GM role at Nova, and from there took progressively larger GM roles. So, people ask me, do I use my PhD education? And I really don't use the true science every single day, but I do learn. I use so much of what I learned, just inquisitiveness, being curious, drive to solve those problems, a lot of planning, a lot of project management, a lot of proactivity. So those basic skills that you will get, throughout those challenges of doing experiment after experiment, having to change things up to figure out why it's working, why it's not working, and get to that, that scientific answer.
Yeah, your answer definitely resonated with me. I was a chemical engineering bachelor, a PhD in chemical engineering as well. Just curious, Rebecca, obviously you grew up with the farm, you were exposed to so many different things. You talk about civil engineering, bioengineering, and chemical engineering, right? And just curious, why do you end up picking chemical engineering?
Yeah. I don't know, maybe because chemistry was so much of my life. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, my grandparents, because my mom and dad were both school teachers and they had to work hard. We didn't grow up with a ton of money. And, my grandmother was always doing things like making pickles. Well, pickles fermentation, and fermentation is chemistry. Yeah. She was cooking all the time. I just learned so much from her, and I just felt natural chemistry did much more than the others. All the other engineering science, sciences are great too, but chemical engineering just seemed very natural to me.
Yeah, great to hear. So as you started out at Nova, right, you were starting your career on operational side as process engineer. Mm-hmm. And I know you are really big into operational excellence. Can you share how does that experience shape your philosophy and approach towards operational excellence? And maybe you can share a few examples of how you implemented operational excellence while overcoming challenges.
Yeah. Nova was a great place to learn about operational excellence because Nova, for those of you who don't know, is basically a commodity plastics company. Commodity polystyrene, polyethylene. They also sold some of those commodity monomers like styrene and ethylene. And, when you're in a commodity business, margins are oftentimes thin. And so I learned very early at Nova that you had to eliminate the waste. And operational excellence is all about waste elimination. The first time I got experience and exposure to S&OP, sales and operations planning, was at Nova. We put in great operational processes and sort of systems and structure around how we're going to do sales and operations planning, from demand planning to production planning to inventory planning, and drove a lot of working capital improvement through those processes. Then I moved to Alcoa, as you noted, and learned about Alcoa Business Systems. And that's where I really got introduced to the Toyota production system in a deeper way, because Alcoa sent several folks over to Toyota to learn about Toyota production system and implemented it in Alcoa, and again, branded it Alcoa Business System. And then at Honeywell, we did something very similar called the Honeywell Operating System. And there I even went deeper into strategy deployment, the X matrix, and really driving those processes that show inputs drive outputs. And that's become really my philosophy on leadership. We have to focus on the inputs related to operations to really ensure we're going to drive the right outputs. You can look at metrics all day long, but metrics are rear view, mirror indicators. They're not leading indicators. So what are those leading indicator metrics that tell you you're really changing the game? A couple of the biggest ones for me are demand planning. If you don't get demand planning right, you're going to have a lot of other challenges in your organization, because demand planning tells you how much inventory you need to hold, right? How much raw materials you need to buy, what your production capability is going to be, what you need at warehouses, and how you're going to distribute. It gives you such a good view on the future. Another big input is new product innovation, because if you don't have a really strong operational process around new product innovation, you won't get those new products to market in the future. So, operations, I think, is critical in having true world-class operating systems that the whole organization can rally behind, understands, and they're standard enough that help employees understand what their decision rights and, sort of decision criteria are. It's hard for you to make a decision if you don't know if that's within your responsibility scope. Is it within your authority level, et cetera, et cetera? And a strong operating model can really help with that too.
Yeah, the RACI analysis. I remember when at your prior company, when we both worked there, and then I know the big philosophy of yours is roles and responsibility, RACIs, complexity reductions, and it's very thought-provoking. I remember listening to one of your team present the impact of complexity reduction. It's very thought-provoking to think about the lost capacity, the quality, the costs, the hidden costs associated with the complexity. Is not just about adding another SKU, but what's the true cost of adding that, and be able to provide that.
Yeah, we just went through an exercise here at Lubrizol. We've done a strategy refresh, and part of that was to look at the complexity across our organization. And I think for many of our businesses and sub-businesses, it's been a bit of an eye-opener to what capacity we can free up if we eliminate some of those more complex SKUs. We actually look for the complexity or productivity busters out in our portfolio today, those productivity busters that make our plants less productive, and we're going after them.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously over the last few years with COVID, with supply chain disruptions, things have been challenging for all of us. And how did you deploy operational excellence to address those challenges?
So, I think that the best example I have of operational excellence deployment was when I was at Honeywell leading the electronic materials business. Electronic materials are materials used to make semiconductors. And in the global economic recession, semiconductors was one of the first markets to really crash. And we saw that our revenues dropped by half overnight. And we were really struggling with how are we going to survive and be prepared for what could be a recovery that happens pretty fast. So we went into all of our plants and we deployed standard work. We made sure that everyone understood their roles and responsibilities. We looked at everything across every plant around productivity gains. And then we also focused on making sure that the critical process steps were always moving. There's that book called The Goal. I don't know if you ever read it. And there's the Herbies out there. What is the Herbie? What are your bottlenecks? And making sure that you're eliminating those bottlenecks so you could really rev up your process. And one particular plant of ours did a lot of machining, and we found that the machinist, the guy or gal operating the lathe, was oftentimes our bottleneck. So we ensured that those machinists that were experts in getting to very, very microscopic levels of quality always had all the materials and supplies they needed to do their job, so they didn't have to leave the machine. And that sped up our production so much that, when in a very unfortunate situation hit Fukushima, when Fukushima hit in 2011, it really devastated the electronic materials supply chain because a lot of the electronic materials were made in Japan.
Yeah.
But Honeywell's electronic materials, many of ours were actually made in other parts of the world, in the US, in Korea, in Taiwan, et cetera. So we were able to rev up our supply chains and offset significant quantities of materials that were lost due to Fukushima and really support the industry. And we wouldn't have been able to do that without driving those operational excellence, without ensuring that those key, Herbies, those key bottlenecks could keep operating throughout, and just we call it feed the king. The king was the person that always had to have the material coming to them. The king should never leave their post. And by doing those simple kind of things, it really can change the way you operate your plants.
Yeah, fascinating story, especially on the comment on the bottleneck. A lot of times when you map out a project, you could be doing a lot of different initiatives, but which one is really going to help that bottleneck? That is a high value.
And oftentimes you improve one bottleneck and then it pops up someplace else. So you have to keep moving around and focusing on where your bottleneck is. I was just at one of the Lubrizol plants in Midland, Michigan, and they actually have a really nifty idea to figure out where the bottleneck is. They take a jar and they put ping pong balls wherever they're seeing the bottleneck of that day or that week or that hour. And over a period of a couple of weeks, they see which bottle has the most ping pong balls, and that's the area they go focus on to drive improvement. And they've driven improvement and moved their bottleneck around and really sped up their production capability.
Wow, that's a fascinating example. I mean, it's actually get to the point that you have to identify the bottleneck and measure it, and the ping pong ball is a great way of visualizing where the bottleneck is.
Absolutely,
it's very clever.
Absolutely.
So next is a topic about disruption and transformation of chemical industry.
Mm-hmm.
Right, if there's one thing that's constant, that disruption and transformation. So what do you see as the major disruptions in the chemical industry, and how are these disruptors redefining traditional business model and creating new revenue for growth?
Yeah, I'm going to go more with the transformation. Maybe it's a little disruptive, but it's sustainability, and it's sustainability in this way. We all need to do it, and we're all doing it. But the reporting on sustainability is getting very, very complex. And I think it's going to disrupt and transform how we have to work together as suppliers, as customers, as industry partners, as even countries and legislations to figure out how we're going to, sort of streamline some of this reporting. Think about it. There's European reach, there's Korean reach, there's Taiwanese reach, now there's Turkey reach. And in each case, we're having to report on it somewhat differently, which is becoming very, very complex. Now, California has passed new rules on reporting of sustainability. The SEC is considering passing new rules on reporting of sustainability. And if we don't, in some way, get some consistency and a common approach that we can all agree to, how do you do an LCA, a life cycle assessment, right? It's not consistent yet. And if we don't figure this out, all of this extra work is going to weigh down the chemical industry. And I'm concerned we'll have to put so much cost, so much spend into doing this reporting that it will take money away from innovation, which I don't think anybody wants to see happen.
Yeah, standardization of reporting. So globally, ideally, have one standard so you can value the company at the same basis. That is really a critical point.
Yeah. And, even if maybe we don't have to report everything, maybe if there's 20 categories, maybe every, entity isn't going to require us to report on all 20. But if we can agree to the process for each one, then no matter where we report or how many you have to report, you can report the same number.
Yeah. And Rebecca, that gets into a big topic today is scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, and how do you determine the carbon footprint of the products? Because if you look at scope 1 and scope 2 emission, if that's your goal, you might make a different decision if you look at scope 1, 2, and 3. So how do you streamline that basis for determining carbon reporting and to make decisions? I fully agree with you. This will be very critical.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's something we're all still struggling to get, working to get right. Maybe struggling to get right is also the right word to use. But at Lubrizol, we're really focused on how we can improve the sustainability, for all the things we do. Sustainability has been in our DNA. It's been in our chemistry, as we like to say, since we were created in 1928. Our technology has enabled cars to go from lasting 3,000 miles to 300,000 miles. We've enabled miles per gallon increases. We've enabled NOx and SOx reductions. In other parts of our business, in our advanced material side, we enable clean water, clean fuels, clean hands. Mm-hmm. And so all of these things are things that our products enable, and we're going to keep doing the right thing by that. And we'll figure out how we calculate carbon as time goes by.
Yeah. Our next topic is on transformation. So you have a lot of experiences leading transformations at different companies. Maybe can you share some lesson learned or best practices in leading successful transformation of companies?
Well, yeah, I think the number one thing you have to think about when you're leading a transformation of a company is, what's in your core and what's not. Because what's in your core is where you're really going to take the company forward. And then you need to figure out how you're going to continue to evolve the rest of the organization. And a big part of leading transformation is bringing the organization along, right? People want to know the why. I really got familiar with Simon Sinek's Golden Circles, the why, the how, the what. Mm-hmm. And a lot of companies tell the how and the what, how you're going to move something around, how you're going to do a certain calculation. But really what they want to know is the why. Why does the company exist? What's your purpose? What's your mission? What's your values? And why are you asking someone to do the work you're asking them to do? And I think once you get through that, then you can go on to the how and the what, and it makes getting that done so much easier. So, coming into Lubrizol, we've had some challenges over the last several years. Everyone did, with COVID, the U.S. Gulf Coast freeze. We had a couple other challenges. And so we had to talk about really what's our value, what's our mission, what's our purpose, and then how are we all going to move forward together. And once you do that, I think it really changes the discussion from not about sort of if, but it's about let's go, right? Let's move and let's make this happen.
Yeah. And Rebecca, especially for companies that are actually doing okay, but you want to take it to the next level, the why is really important, right? Because the employee be like, well, we're healthy, we're profitable. Why do we want to go to the next level? I think framing that why and convincing that the whole company to go along with it, I think that would be a very important lever.
Well, it's easy to say that we're doing okay. Most companies are doing okay, but everything's advancing so quickly around us, right? Look at, you can use your cell phone as an example. Just a few years ago, I think about 10 years ago, your cell phone was pretty basic. Now it can do almost everything for you. You hardly need, many other devices. And you look at where ChatGPT has come in just, I think about not even a year, right? It's been launched, and everything that's already doing for you. So if organizations think that companies can be static and not dynamic, I think they're fooling themselves. We have to be dynamic, and we have to move with the markets.
Yeah. Well, next topic is on innovation. There are two parts to it. Let's start with the first part is on, not necessarily disrupting innovation, but just typical innovation, new product development. Can you talk about how you balance the innovation requirements, given it typically requires a longer timeline compared with the need to deliver for shareholders daily?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a favorite topic of mine. I worked for Honeywell for 12 years, and Dave Cote was the CEO for the majority of that time, and he wrote a book called Winning Now, Winning Later. And Dave's message was absolutely aligned with your question, which is you can't take all the profits and all of the wins today. You have to continually seed plant for the future, and that's what the winning later means. So, you ask about operational effectiveness and, sort of that operating model earlier on. And the way I look at it is, let's say we save $1 because we do some great operating model improvements. We drive productivity and things like that. We need to think about putting some part of that money to our shareholders, because our shareholders deserve a return, but we need to put other parts of that money back to reinvest in the business. And you could say, okay, maybe 50 cents on the dollar you return to shareholders, 50 cents you reinvest into the business. I'm not going to say that that's a hard and fast rule, because if you're a high growth company, you may want to only put 10 cents or 20 cents back to the shareholder and put 80 or 90 cents to invest for growth, because you've got so many growth opportunities. So for me, it's all about making sure you're balancing the financial returns to your shareholders and the financial returns that you're investing for the future. And it's not just also capital that you're investing for the future, but you also have to invest your human resources, right? Your people resources. I mentioned that Lubrizol recently did a strategy refresh. And as we talked about where we're spending our resources, we talked a lot about where we're spending our capital resources or our cash, but we also talked a lot about where we're spending our people resources, because in some cases our people were working on things that probably weren't going to add as much value for us as some other areas. So we really took a step back and we challenged where we're spending our time. And we're still going through this. You don't make these shifts overnight. It's not like you can just flip a switch, but because you want to move the organization at the right time. But the other thing about investing for the future and innovation is having, again, I'll go back to processes. You need a strong gate review process, because first off, you need to make sure every investment that you're working on or project you're working on has a good financial return. So you have a business case. And then you start down that path, and you're going to have different stages. You're going to have to accomplish certain things. Well, you might get through the innovation stage 1 or stage 2 and realize, this isn't turning out the way we thought it should. And maybe we need to either take a step back, see if we can drive a different innovation, or take a step back and kill the project if you can't get to the right innovation you're looking for, right? The whole kiss or kill, right? You've got to make some of those decisions. And I think the best way to understand how to make those decisions is obviously being very close to the market. So knowing the market's better than the competition and the customers better than they know themselves, because then you're going to know, does your new innovation or does your new idea is it really going to go? Is it really going to have demand? And, if you can't get the innovation to work, then you may have to make a different decision.
Yeah. A follow-up questions on that, Rebecca. Innovation by itself has inherent uncertainty because you don't know if this idea is going to work. And especially when it comes down to managing timeline, that becomes a little bit challenging because you cannot predict the path it's going to go. Kind of tie it back to the operational excellence. How do you manage that, okay, you're going to deliver this innovation by this day, but there's inherent uncertainty associated with the technical approaches to technologies. So how do you balance the two?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, look, I learned this getting my PhD too. Every experiment's not going to go the way you want. Every innovation, you can dream that the innovation is going to happen, but sometimes they just don't. And so you have to realize that there is failure in innovating and accept that and make it okay in your organization to fail. You can't be critical if an experiment doesn't work or a project doesn't work. Now, what you can be critical on is you don't learn about the failure quickly enough. You continue to work on a project way too long. You spend more money than you expected to spend, even after failures are happening. So that's to your point around the timeline. I think this is where having more of an agile process can really come in handy, right? Where you say, okay, you have most agile processes are a week or 2 weeks. You go out, you do your experiments, and you come back and report to your manager or to the team about how it worked. And if you have 2 or 3 cycles where you're not making progress, I think you really have to step back and say, do we have a path to make this work or not? And if we don't, then that's where you may have to kill the project, or you have to take a different tact, a different trajectory, and see if you can find a path.
Yeah. Good point. Well, now the second part of that question is related to more graduate level disruptive innovations. So you have successfully led the launch of disruptive innovations in your career. Can you share your approach towards conceiving and launching disruptive innovations?
Yeah. Well, disruptive innovations inherently are really risky, right? And so I would recommend that most folks really think about them before you go at them, and try to have a disruptive innovation be at least connected to something you're familiar with. Either it's in the same market you've been doing business in, or maybe with a customer you've been doing business with. So you have a path to the market or to the customer that you're familiar with, because there's this, everyone's seen a 4-block quadrant, right? So markets, customers, if you're in the, let's just call it lower left-hand quadrant where you know them very, very well, that's easy, right? You might go up or over that gives you a step away from each of them. But if you go up to the top right-hand quadrant, oftentimes that's called the quadrant of death because it's it's new markets and it's new customers. And it's extremely hard for customers to make, or for companies to make that leap. I'll go back to what I said before. Know your markets better than the competition. Know your customers better than they know themselves. And if you do that, I think you can make shifts away from your core quadrant into new customers and new markets, or new chemistries and the same customer, right? Or new chemistries in the same market. But I wouldn't think about doing new on everything, because that's really a challenge.
Yeah. And Rebecca, we think about, to reduce risk in terms of innovations, strategic partnership, as well as potential acquisitions could be a way to reduce risk, but then there's a price to pay for that too, it factoring into your resource allocation. What do you think about that? How should one approach innovating through partnerships or M&A?
Yeah, well, I think those are great approaches today. M&A, of course, works. Sometimes, you have to be able to afford the acquisition target, or some timelines and regulatory challenges could be there. But open innovation is becoming more and more acceptable, and actually a way to get new innovations in quickly. Think about it. There's a lot of technology that may be valuable to a company that's in pharma, as an example, that may also be valuable to somebody that's in maybe a coding space, and they're non-competitive. So, licensing technology from one to the other could be a way that you could get your, hands on a technology and still, not have to do an acquisition, because you can work in separate spaces and not be competitors. So I think the way to use open innovation and a way to bring it into your space that might also still be applicable in another space. We actually did that recently, bringing in some technology that was originally used in food, right? It was used in some food applications, and we were able to bring it in and use it in some of our beauty applications. So, the food and the beauty, they don't compete. And so the other company that we work with on this technology has no issue with it. We have no issue with it. And it's a great partnership. And it actually, cuts down some of the cost of development.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it can be brought into more than just technology. It could be best practices done in a certain industry. You can take it to another industry and apply the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, the next topic is on geopolitics. And it is a interesting, contentious, very popular topic these days, especially with rising U.S.-China tension. So from your perspective, right, what's the impact of the geopolitics in the chemical industry, and particularly Lubrizol? And how would you approach investment given the geopolitics in emerging regions like China and India?
Well, Lubrizol's taken the approach typically that we're local for local in the markets we serve, like India and China. So our investments in China have been to service the local Chinese market primarily. Our investments in India have been to service the local Indian market primarily. And, we feel that you have to be in those markets to be successful. There's 1.4 roughly, billion people in each of those markets. And of course, China's a little further advanced than India is today. But I just don't think you can move at the speed needed. You can have the relationships and connections with the governments and customers and suppliers and channel partners in those countries unless you're local. Now, some may say, would you continue to invest at China at the same pace you have in the past? I think China's growth is slowing somewhat, but they still have, again, 1.4 billion people. Their GDP per capita is $12,000 a year. Compare that to the US, which is roughly $1,000 per year. So as you think about that mid-market economy, that middle class, I mean, it's still moving up, and there's a lot of opportunity for sales into that space. And Lubrizol has great products for that. Products that you might buy through shampoos and soaps and beauty creams and things like that, but also products that would come as an example if you have your first home, you need a refrigerator, you need an air conditioner, You might buy a car, and all of those things would use Lubrizol type products. So we want to be there for that mid-market economy, that middle class, as they continue to grow and evolve in both China and India and Southeast Asia and Latin America and Africa. Now, we also look at sort of China as being probably 15 years ahead of India from an evolution perspective. If you look at roads and infrastructure and sort of, housing and things like that. So we recently announced a $150 million investment in India to support particularly infrastructure. We have a product called chlorinated PVC, CPVC, goes primarily into piping for clean water. And the reason CPVC is so great for India is they have a lot of chlorine in their water for cleanliness. And we are able to help move that water around because our piping is very, very durable when it comes to some of those additives like chlorines, fluorines, et cetera. So, we're excited about the opportunity for growth in India, and hopefully we'll be making some more announcements about further growth soon.
Yeah, that's a great point, that given the size of the economy and where they are in terms of middle class upgrading themselves, there's still a lot of market potential. I've heard, even they have different scenario projecting China growth. Even at 2% GDP growth, the incremental size is going to be huge.
It's huge. And you think about, okay, Shanghai and Beijing, very advanced, very developed, but there's a lot of tier 2 and tier 3 cities that, still need, like I talked about, refrigerators, air conditioners, construction for infrastructure and things like that. So we have not written China off at all. We believe China is going to be an economy that's going to provide a lot of growth for Lubrizol and then India as well.
Yeah, I mean, from my company perspective, geopolitics is one part of the equation, but the other part is rising local competition, which has been happening over the past, several years, even past decade, that the local competition, their technology gap, they're growing, they're improving, their quality is getting better. And do you see, geopolitics aside, the rising local competitions, and how would the multinationals, right, manage that and then be able to win in that market?
Yeah. Well, look, there's always competition. I lived in China in 2008 and, learned a lot about the competition and how you compete there. I think the number one thing we have to do is continue to bring those really innovative products, those leading edge solutions and deploy them to the market. And do it at greater speed. And that's why you can't do it from Northeast Ohio, right? Yep. I learned that when I lived in Shanghai. You cannot run a U.S. business from Northeast Ohio or from New Jersey or from, Texas. You need to be in the market with leaders and teams that you trust and know are going to drive and win. And so, we're really empowering our teams in Lubrizol around the world to help us grow.
That's great. So you've been with Lubrizol for almost a year now. I remember you joined last October. Can you share your vision for Lubrizol and what excites you the most for its future?
Yeah. Well, we just finished our purpose statement, so I'm going to try to repeat it here and get it right now, because it's hot off the presses. But Lubrizol science delivers sustainable solutions that advance mobility, improve well-being, and enhance modern life. And we are super proud about that purpose statement because it touches what we do to the core. And we spent a lot of time really thinking about each word because because it's Lubrizol, that's all of us, our science, we're core in science with sustainable solutions. Because we've been sustainable, as I mentioned earlier, from day one of the company. And we've always brought solutions. We don't just sell a product, we sell a solution. Mobility is our core, right? All the transportation, lubricants we do, but we also have health, beauty, home, which is a lot about well-being. And modern life, I mentioned, we bring compressors that go into refrigerators, that go into air conditioners, and a lot of other modern things, the fluids that go in those compressors and things like that. So for us, it's really about that purpose statement. And we believe it's going to resonate through the organization. Beyond that, after we've talked about growth, we have a strong growth agenda. We truly believe that India, China, Southeast Asia, Latin America, Brazil particularly, can deliver tremendous growth for Lubrizol over the next 5 years. But that's not to leave out the US and Europe and some of the more developed economies, because there's a lot of opportunity in these areas as well, with sustainable solutions and with some of our truly differentiated applications and capability sets. At the core, we are a dispersion science and surface chemistry company. And if you look at everything that's around us, it's a surface. So Lubrizol's products have a long lifespan, and I've used the term maybe a little bit teased out by Elon Musk, but whether it's going to be flying cars or trips to Mars, we're going to be on your surfaces.
Wow, that's a nice slogan. Absolutely. That embodied the purpose and the technology, the innovation, everything about Lubrizol.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good lead into my next questions on EV. And certainly, EV has a huge impact. If you look at Lubrizol, the root of Lubrizol is in lubricants, especially have a big presence in the internal combustion engine space. With the rise of EV, and what do you see as the impact on the EV on the chemical industry, and specifically, how does that change or help or challenge Lubrizol's traditional business model in the internal combustion space?
Yeah, everybody asks us that question, and it's a fair question. Look, EVs are here, right? And they're not going away. But we really believe there are going to be sort of a continuum of energy systems for transportation, from internal combustion to electric vehicle, pure electric vehicle, to hybrid electric vehicle, to probably hydrogen fuel cells in certain applications, and even combusted hydrogen ultimately could be something that's used in a lot, more frequency. So we're focused on how we enable all of those energy types for transportation. We've studied very closely the EV transition and the internal combustion engine demand, and we see out through 2035 still a very strong demand for internal combustion engines materials, because there's such a large car park. There's going to be, today there's about 1.5 billion internal combustion engine vehicles on the road, passenger cars, not heavy duty. And by 2035, there's going to be about 1.3. So only 200 million cars will be declined. But on top of that, the EVs are going to go up, which Lubrizol has great products for. Because if you think about it, most of our products are hydrocarbon based. They're nonpolar. So they're great for uses and application that require electric and have copper and have a lot of, connection points. They're also great for thermal management and cooling. So we're in electric motors, that are on the axles or wheels of EVs. We're also developing products that are used for thermal management in batteries. And, we talked about sort of disruptive innovation before. We've actually taken several of these products and reformulated them to do cooling of servers. So servers for like server farms for your big, like an Amazon AWS type of server warehouse. And, the application that is available from these products is huge. And I think we're just, sort of touching the surface of where all we can be in an electric vehicle. And then further to that, as you think about more electrically oriented products where we could help reduce temperature, drive better cooling, more efficient cooling, more sustainable cooling.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned sustainability is a major transformation factors, right? Or disruptors in the chemical industry. And what's your view on the role of sustainability in the future growth of Lubrizol?
Well, I'm going to be a little bit of a broken record. It's in our DNA. It's in our chemistry. It's been with us since day one. We continue to look at all facets of sustainability. We need our sites to be sustainable, less steam, less energy. If they use energy, it needs to be from renewable sources. We want to reduce waste. We're looking at things like, when we use water to clean our reactors out, can we use less water? Sometimes we use solvents to clean our reactors or other flush oils. How do we use less of that? How do we reuse those waters and oils so that we can be more sustainable and not have to dispose of them inappropriately? That's, in our factories. In sustainable innovations, we're looking at using more biodegradable feedstocks, more renewable feedstocks. We've recently launched a transformation in our Carbapol franchise. Carbapol we invented in the 1960s, and it's been around. It's been a workhorse in all kinds of products, from from the likes of Purell hand sanitizer to excipients that are used to deliver pharma products into your body, to all kinds of lotions and creams and things like that. We were asked by the marketplace to deliver a product that is more biodegradable, and we have developed that. So again, a breakthrough innovation, and we've recently sold that to one of the major consumer products companies. So we're excited about the future and what we're doing, not just at our sites, but how we're dealing with products coming into our sites and how we're innovating products that are going to go out of our locations.
Yeah, that's a great overview of the sustainability initiative. And back in April, we actually, a part of Societe, I helped organize a panel discussion on home care. Mm-hmm. So we have executives from Colgate, Reckitt, BSF, and Azilis as part of that panel. And there was the comment they made is, if you look at the consumer, there is consensus that consumer are not willing to pay an extra premium just for being sustainable without performance benefit. And one of the points they made is you have to tie the sustainability to the broader, more of like scope 3, right? How does it help? How does this product not only sustainable, but how does it help make the customer's operation sustainable? Either faster throughput, lower energy consumption, lower cost. So you can actually deliver extra value beyond being sustainable to command possibly a premium. And I'm curious in getting your thoughts too. I'm sure Lubrizol has a lot of innovations that not just being sustainable itself, but also deliver sustainable benefit and actually cost saving, and maybe added value to the end customer. Yeah, can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. If we can help the customers get more benefit from the product, then they can afford to your point, pay a little bit more. I mean, as an example, one of our sustainable innovations is around home care and detergent for your clothes. Mm-hmm. And so we can enable you as a consumer to wash in cold water, which saves the heating cost of the water every year. And so the estimates on saving of the heating costs can be over $1,000 and for you every year on heating the water to wash your clothes. So if you can wash in cold water, then that's a saving. So that sustainable product may cost a tad more, but you can wash in cold water and save that money. So that's exactly how we're approaching it. How can we bring additional benefits to the market with our products?
Yeah. That's great. So I would just remind the audience, please type in your question in the chat box. We'll be monitoring it and we'll get to it at the Q&A. So now we get to our last questions, and I believe it's actually the most interesting one about Berkshire Hathaway. Oh, right? Okay. Lubrizol is part of Berkshire Hathaway. So what's it like to be part of Berkshire Hathaway? And I'm sure all the audience have the following questions. Did you have a chance to meet Mr. Warren Buffett? And if so, what is he like?
Yeah. Berkshire has been extremely supportive of our strategy refresh, our investments for growth, the organization, and where we're taking everyone and everything. I can't ask for a better company to be part of. I have met Warren, and I'll say is Warren's exactly what people have seen on TV. He and through some of the articles, he's no nonsense. He's practical. He challenges us. He challenges us to think about business in a very structured way, and he expects a return.
Yeah, it seems like a mystical figure to me. I'm sure there are a lot of us who have never met him, but thank you for helping to demystify him a little bit. So we have gone through all the prepared questions, and so the audience will start the Q&A, but please type in your questions. And I actually maybe I'll kick it off with 2 additional questions that, I talked to some people who are attending today. Maybe they just haven't typed in the question yet. A lot of the audience members, they are in the mid-career. So do you have, as a person with successful career, do you have any advice for mid-career professionals?
Yeah. My biggest advice is build your network. I honestly didn't do that well enough, I don't think, when I was a bit more junior in my career. I always felt like I was imposing on, executives, leaders' times. They didn't have time to spend on me. Why would they want to support me or coach me or mentor me? And, maybe I was just trying to not be selfish, but I don't think it's being selfish in hindsight. Sitting here where I am today, I love to support people in their mid-career or early career or late career, but I get your point on mid-career. And it's an honor to be able to be a mentor, to be a coach, to be someone that you can get a phone call and say, hey, Rebecca, can you help me with this problem or help me think through that problem? So absolutely build your network and reach out to them and build relationships with them. So when you do need to make that call and ask a tough question or get some help, then you have that relationship to make it happen.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Rebecca. So we have a couple questions from the audience. The first question is, what drew you to Lubrizol? What has been the most valuable learning this first year as a CEO?
I've known Lubrizol for so long, back to the Nova Chemicals days, because we bought products that would be used in some in our polymers and things like that as rheology modifiers, et cetera. And, Lubrizol was always known to be able to solve those really tough problems. When nobody else could solve a problem, Lubrizol could solve it. And so, as a PhD surface scientist myself, the surface chemistry and the products just were so near and comfortable to me. It was really, a natural. What have I learned in my first year? I have learned that the people of Lubrizol are just exceptional. And they make this company what it is today. And I've also learned that our customers, really appreciate our solutions. And when I meet with our customers, and they almost talk about our employees and our solutions in the same vein, I think it's so commingled. When our customers talk about what we do, they often talk about the person and the solution together. And that's a great place to be, because, you can really tell that the customers appreciate us.
Well, certainly, being a customer of Lubrizol, we certainly appreciate the innovation from Lubrizol. It's with innovative product, disruptive technologies.
Thank you Thank you for the business.
Absolutely. So next question is, how big is the CPVC business for Lubrizol today? And do you see more expansion opportunities after investment you mentioned in India for that part of the portfolio?
Yeah, well, we don't talk specific business numbers in Lubrizol as part of Berkshire, because we don't disclose those. But suffice it to say, it's a multi-$100 million business, and we see lots of growth opportunities for the CPVC business in India, and then even beyond in some of the other economies that I mentioned that are higher growth economies that are investing in infrastructure, that are going to need clean water, fire suppression systems, and the like. We have all types of products that can be used for delivering water, to your faucet, or delivering water to sprinklers, and other applications. So we see this as a pretty strong opportunity for growth.
That's great. The next question is, Lubrizol has had some manufacturing challenges over the past several years. What steps are you taking to minimize these challenges in the future?
Yeah. So we absolutely have had some manufacturing challenges. I think it's public. We've had a couple of fires that were not good for Lubrizol and not good for our customers. I mentioned earlier, inputs drive outputs. I think the number one thing we have to do from an HS&E perspective is make sure we have the right processes and systems to ensure that these things don't happen. The inputs, you think about them. Audits, have you closed your audit findings? Have you done the right proactive and preventative maintenance? Do you have good mechanical reliability and mechanical integrity programs? Are people walking around doing those gimbal walks, looking for opportunities that could be a safety hazard, that could result in something catastrophic like Lubrizol had? Safety is owned by all of us. every single one of us have to take ownership of when we walk around, whether, we're holding the handrails, going up and down the steps, we're lifting a box that might be too heavy, or trying to move something that's going to be bad for, an ergonomic perspective, or something that could be around our equipment mechanically or otherwise. So I think Lubrizol has learned a lot from this. We've implemented a revamped ERM system. So, and we've put on with our ERM system and process executive sponsorship, executive leaders setting on that panel, on that steering committee, that are going to make sure that, we continue to evolve. This is a place you can't stand still, and you can't take anything for granted. And I hope everyone can learn from Lubrizol's, incidents and continue to move forward.
Thank you. Yes, audience, please continue to submit any questions you have. I do have one. Certainly, being the CEO of Lubrizol, you have a big job. And what do you do for fun?
I love to, I mentioned growing up on the farm, right? So I come by this naturally. I love to spend time like in nature, in the garden. I was just sharing with some of my friends that I'm taking on a challenge to grow a natural flower garden, because I've heard that if you start to grow the natural flower gardens versus sort of grass, you can get, bees back, and butterflies and hummingbirds and all kinds of nature back. And the world needs more bees, because bees pollinate, and, they make sure that gardens and flowers and everything are healthy, and we need all of these things. So I started this process earlier this year. It required me to get rid of some traditional grass, get the soil ready for planting the seeds. The flower seeds will be planted probably in November. You put straw on top of them, and then by the spring, I should have a beautiful flower garden. So natural flower garden. I'm hoping that that is what happens. I will send pictures.
Absolutely. We'd love to see that. So we have 2 additional questions. That's great. I'll keep them coming. We have 4 more minutes. Given the slow economic growth on the globe, how does Lubrizol manage internal resources to manage existing businesses and prepare for growth? What else has Lubrizol been doing to preserve healthy margin?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier we did a strategy refresh, and as part of that, we had to look at how we could pivot some resources so that we could put the right resources on the areas that have exceptional growth opportunities, while still maintaining resources on our more traditional areas. Because look, we have opportunities, as I mentioned, in the US and Europe, as well as India, China, and other growth regions. So, we talked with our teams. We talked about what it would mean, how we would pivot, and how we would have resources support. The other thing is, a lot of our R&D facilities, the big, expensive ones, are in Cleveland. In the UK, we have another large facility in Spain, and we can't afford to duplicate those everywhere. So we also have to set up a system where we can really support some of the growth regions from these traditional facilities. And that means making sure teams understand which, where they're aligned with, and making sure they're working on the right projects. And I also mentioned, having that stage gate process is really important, because that'll make sure that we're putting the right resources on those projects that have the highest value return. So, I wish I said it's just like an easy answer. It's not, because you can't duplicate. We probably have $300 or $400 million worth of R&D infrastructure that we just can't, afford to duplicate, or the time to duplicate it would be way too long. So we have to use what we have, and that means we need the whole globe working together from one Lubrizol perspective. That's one of our values, and I'm certain we can drive it. And, healthy margins, everybody's had to deal with inflation. We certainly have had a lot of inflation. We had to price the inflation through to our customers, and I know they're pricing it through to their customers. And then we also looked at how we could drive productivity and continuous improvement, and really help with our margins. They're recovering. I wouldn't say they're at the health level we want today. I think everyone has dealt with this inflation and lowered demand. But, over the next several years, we're going to get there.
That's great. There's a question on overall demand for lubricants, right? What do you think the outlook is for 2024 in terms of demand for lubricants? For chemicals, most are saying that they won't see a major rebound until the second half of 2024. Any thoughts?
Yeah, we're planning very similar to what is mentioned here. We think that, we're going to probably move a little sideways from Q3 to Q4 to Q1, and maybe see some improvement in Q2 or so in next year. That being said, we're not standing still right now. We're driving our organization to think about productivity, to think about continuous improvement, to think about new ways of working, to leverage data and decision science, the chat GPTs, artificial intelligence, machine learning, because right now, while we're a little slow, it's the time to really get these processes and systems humming so that when the market recovers, we'll be there to capture it.
That's great. So I know we are right on time. Rebecca, any closing thoughts?
Well, I want to thank you, Sean, for coming to Northeast Ohio and to Lubrizol for this podcast and Fireside Chat. And I want to thank the Lubrizol team for the first year. I mean, I can't believe I'm coming up on my first year anniversary. It's been a great year. We've accomplished a lot. And then I also want to thank the Societe for allowing me to be part of this, and look forward to seeing everybody again soon.
Yeah, great to have you. Well, thank you all for joining. We pride ourselves on.
Yeah,
Peter?
I just want to close and remind people October 4th on sustainable investing, October 18th on DNA developments. But I also want to encourage all of you to become members if you're not a member, because Societe is a very vital, multifaceted organization. We give scholarships, we have education committees, we have these kind of programs on topics that are important to those people who are in the industry. So I encourage you to be members. And also, if any of you are interested in being on any of the committees, we have an education committee, we have a program committee. We encourage you to do so, to do that. It's very exciting, and it's a way to give back to an industry that is benefiting all of us. So with that, I want to thank you all. And again, thank you, Sean, for organizing this event. And thank you, Rebecca, for really sharing some really important insights for all of us.
Thank you.
All right.